What's up, everyone? Nameco here, Dustin there. Week 4 is upon us, and once it's done, a quarter of the way done. Almost. Kind of crazy. But Dustin, tell some people some good news.
Well, we want to announce the winner of our photo contest. Huge success on the photo contest. Thank you all for participating. But it came down the wire. We actually had some controversy because we never specified a time zone on when the voting ends. And on East Coast voting, one person was winning, and on West Coast time, someone else was winning. So we're giving them both a belt.
That's the kind of guys we are.
Mr. McCoop 305 with the leprechaun. Everyone enjoyed that one. And then Joey D. Kamish, the one that had my face on a cardboard cutout, which I really enjoyed. But then I got the address to send him the belt and realized he lived about 20 minutes away from me. And I'm not so sure how I feel about me being in someone else's basement, but I enjoy it. I do enjoy it. But I thought that was a little interesting.
It's a lot.
But thank you all very much for participating.
No, we appreciate it. All right, and of course we're going to do 2 belts. That was clear the move to go with that.
We're happy about it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so here we go. We're talking about Week 4 rankings. I'm going to start with the quarterbacks. And the quarterback I'd like to highlight is Andrew Luck. First and foremost, he's playing across the pond, as they say, so it's a very, very early start time on Sunday. So note that for your lineups, because you might wake up and the game's already on. So just be sure of that with setting your lineup. And in terms of Luck, a lot of people are nervous about him, but through 3 games, 6 passing touchdowns, 913 yards. If you knew that going into the year he'd do that the first 3 games, you'd be very happy. So Luck's good, don't worry about him.
I want to talk about number 11, Joe Flacco. He's ahead of a lot of decent names this week, but the reason is they're playing Oakland. I mean, that defense, you can throw the ball in Oakland, and Baltimore can't run the ball. So I really expect them to try to move the ball through the air. They're at home. We're buying the Baltimore's passing offense this week. And one person you might not see on this list is Mr. Tim Tebow, and that's because he's crushing home runs down the Mets minor league.
You and Tebow.
Crushing home runs. I love it.
All right, I walked into that. He goes, guess what Tebow did on his first at bat? All right, so let's move on to running backs since we're talking about real football players.
He is a real football player.
And I'm going to start with Le'Veon Bell. He's back from the suspension, so D'Angelo's been playing well, or at least the first 2 weeks D'Angelo played real well. So we've had a couple questions, how much D'Angelo will be involved, how much Le'Veon will. We have Le'Veon ranked accordingly, like he is getting the bulk, if not all of the carries, it feels like. Of course, D'Angelo will spell him at times, but plug him right in, be extremely happy you weighed him out. He's going to be a beast this week.
At 16 and 17, I want to talk about the Atlanta situation. We all saw what they did against New Orleans, unless you're watching the debate, but you didn't miss much. It was an awful game in terms of defense, if you like defense.
Oh, it was great for fantasy,
It was
though.
great
Come on
for
now.
fantasy.
It was one of the best fantasy games.
This is one of the worst defensive performances
Who cares? It's
ever
great for
seen.
fantasy.
Some people like defense.
Nobody likes defense.
Some people like defense. I don't like defense. But it was the Saints look terrible. Atlanta has Carolina this week. It's going to be a little bit harder for them to do what they did, but we still got them in our top 20. You're still starting them if you own them. If you own them both, that's when you have a tough decision to make, but if you own only one of them, you're almost certainly starting them this week.
All right, the guy that I'm going to be talking about next is Jordan Howard. I want to highlight him. He's going to be the starting running back for the Chicago Bears, and that's because Jeremy Langford's going to be out for a few weeks. So Jordan Howard's actually looked pretty good in the touches that he's gotten this year. He's playing a Detroit team that's middle of the pack against the run. So just don't overdo it where you're like, oh, it's the new guy. I'm going to start him over a bunch of people. I just picked him up. You know, we're ranking him pretty much where we would have had Langford ranked. So just keep that in mind, but obviously he's going to get a ton of touches, so feel really good about it.
And I'm talking about bunches of people here.
You're bundling as you would.
I'm bundling. 26 and 27, the Detroit Lions running backs, Washington and Riddick. You know, I think people got overly excited about Riddick after the Abdullah injury. I mean, he is like I said in the waiver wire show, he's a very good football player, but he's not a between the tackles runner. Washington is much more well suited for that. That's why in standard rankings, which these are, we do have Washington just a little bit higher, but if you can't avoid that situation this week, I probably would until we really know how this timeshare is going to go. But in standard, we trust Washington a little bit more.
All right, as we move on to wide receivers, I'm going to highlight our 13th wide receiver, and that is Marvin Jones. And wow, what a start to the year Marvin Jones has had.
Amazing.
Highlighted by last week, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 catches on 8 targets. So why isn't he number 1? Because that happened last week. So again, don't ask a question. I should him over Antonio Brown. Of course not. That's insane. So either way, we still like Jones, but just know he's not going to do that every week. And I actually think Golden Tate's an interesting buy low right now.
If you can get him really low.
Super. I mean, he might be dropping some leagues.
You can pick him up in some leagues.
If you can do that, I would do that.
Number 16, very interesting player this week, Travis Benjamin. You know, if we have him in our top 20, that means you're pretty much starting him if you got him. And it's all about the matchup here. I mean, again, we saw what Atlanta did to the Saints on Monday night. It was embarrassing. And San Diego, you got to think that they're going to be able to have similar success. Maybe not quite to the same level, but they'll be able to move the ball very easily. Benjamin is a very good start this week.
All right, at number 22, we have Crabtree, and he's playing it's the game against Baltimore. And the thing about Crabtree, and I know these rankings are standard, so keep that in mind, but in a PPR format, so I did my research on real quick, Crabtree's averaging 17 points a game, while Cooper, 15. And I don't know how fluky that is. I mean, Crabtree is getting a lot of targets, looking in the end zone. They're looking at him in the end zone, in the red zone. So, just be confident. He's probably been sitting on your bench. You can move him into a starting lineup at this point. It's certainly a flex play.
My bundling continues, and we're sticking with this Baltimore-Oakland game. We're pretty excited about that one, apparently. But
I love fantasy.
The over-under is 46.5 on this one. I actually think that might be a little low. I think their offenses are better than the defenses in that game. And Steve Smith and Mike Wallace, I think, are very interesting. Standardly, we got Wallace a little higher because of his touchdown potential. But Steve Smith looked fast last week. He looked like he was back. I think there's a potential for a big game for Steve Smith. Obviously, we have him ranked down here because there is still some risk there, so don't go crazy. But he is a very fun, high upside play this week.
The second thing Dustin said to me when I walked in is Steve Smith is amazing. Look at his game log last year. And I knew it, but he made me look at it anyway because he's the boss and that's what he does.
But he looks good.
All right,
healthy.
He does look healthy.
I was skeptical.
I liked him coming into the year and he was hating on him.
I didn't think he would.
You were hating on him.
I thought he'd lose a step, but he looked fast last week.
You were hating. A lot of hate.
I didn't think he'd come back.
Now
he's back, and now I'm respecting him as such.
Moving on to tight ends, we're going to go with Jimmy Graham, another guy that's coming back from an injury. See that little segue? And the thing about Jimmy was he looked like old Jimmy last week. I talked about him last week as well and saying how his snap count has consistently gone up. Well, he played on a ton of snaps again, and he looked great again, and I think that this trend should be continuing for the rest of the season, I'm thinking.
And the guy right after him is Kyle Rudolph, and I'll be the first to admit I have very rarely liked Kyle Rudolph.
That is an understatement.
There was a year where I liked him.
And he failed you.
And he failed me. But every other year, even before I liked him and after I liked him, I have not liked him. But Peterson hurt, Bradford in, and they are targeting him like crazy. And I'm buying it. I'm buying it this year.
Love targets.
I think he's a top 10 tight end from here on out. He has 26 targets already on the year. I think they are going to go more to that short pass instead of trying to run with their committee that hasn't had any success to this point.
Well, and the reason they can do that is because of the defense that I am absolutely in love with. I own them in almost all of my leagues. At number 3, Minnesota. Oh, it's just a sick defense. They're young, and the thing I really liked them about last week, their top corner came back and just shut down Benjamin. So a top corner shutting down part of the field, you're getting pressure on the quarterback, and an interesting little stat, they have forced a turnover on 25.7 of opposing teams' drives against them. So 1 out of 4, they're getting a turnover. Now that's obviously not sustainable, but Minnesota's D, I think, is going to end as the #1 defense of the year. I love them. Love them, love them, love them.
They have looked good. I got the Redskins going up against Cleveland. That was kind of my pick up and play last week, was going with Miami.
It'll be my DraftKings again.
Cleveland. It didn't work out all that great. I mean, Pryor kind of came in and messed that up, but Pryor's really one of the only weapons minus the running backs.
They got turnovers and some sacks. They did okay.
They did okay. But I'm just saying, I think they kind of caught them off guard. I don't know if they were really ready for Pryor to have that kind of impact.
Nobody was.
The Redskins can scheme for it a little bit more, be ready for it. And I do, and I think the Redskins D, they have some weapons. I think they can force some turnovers. I think they can get some pressure on the quarterback. So, not hating on the Redskins this week as a pick up and play.
All right, I'm gonna do my DraftKings. Check out for that later this week.
Get in the forums if you got any questions. Subscribe. Thumbs up.
Yeah, give us some subscribe.
We want some thumbs
and
up.
Do us a favor, share on Facebook, share on wherever else you can. And we might be your secret weapon, all, but you know what? Give us some love. We need some more subscribers out here.
They would be nice.
It would be. Do it for Dustin. I know you like him more than me.
It's true.